Red Knight Consulting Chris Placell is here to discuss the state of desktop as a service market, the rise of vertical industry clouds, and the secrets to successful networking. Plus, I can't miss conversation with Mark Leff of Exclusive Networks about their authorized Fortinet training services. It's a ChannelPro Weekly Special Edition. Everybody Knows Sven, sponsored by Exclusive Networks. Hello and welcome to a special bonus edition of the ChannelPro Weekly Podcast, sponsored by Exclusive Networks. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for the folks out there like you, the VARs, the MSPs, the IT integrators, the IT consultants, the system builders. Yes, we haven't forgotten about you, although we do tend to forget about you every now and then when we introduce the show. But you're always up here because I am a fellow system builder along with you. So kudos to you for building those systems. If you configure firewalls, you're also in the right place, and you're going to actually really want to stick around because we've got a lot in this episode that you're going to want to be hearing, especially later on in our interview. So welcome, one and all. Glad that you are here. Joining me this week and most weeks is the man of the hour, executive editor, Rich Freeman. Welcome, Mr. Freeman.
Greetings, everybody.
You know, do we forget about the system builders too often?
They are never far from our hearts, Matt. If we may or may not, remember to call out those words every time, but they are always dear to us all here at ChannelPro. You know what? I mean, truly, from the very beginning of ChannelPro, that's always been part of the audience that we've really kind of focused on.
It has been, and the cloud and cybersecurity and all this stuff has been so big and prevalent in service. It's become a very service-oriented business, but the hardware is still important, and we should maybe have like a special dedicated episode to hardware someday. I think that would be fun, don't you?
That could be really interesting. Although I thought what you were going to say is we should have sort of a special kind of custom hardware, like a system builder episode, which is an interesting thought too.
That could be fun as well. Yeah. So we'll have to think about that because, well, those system builders are near and dear to our hearts, and we want this show to be great for them as well. So awesome stuff. But Rich, we are not alone this week. Is our guest a system builder? I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe he is. We will find. We're going to ask him. But I'm super excited that he is here with us. He's got more than 20 years of experience in the IT industry. His strengths and experience include the enhancement of revenue generation and cost reduction initiatives through innovative technology planning and re-architecture. He has led major technology infrastructure conversions, directed enterprise-wide initiatives, and has been responsible for crisis management, troubleshooting, acquisition integration, and negotiations. That is a long list of skills, folks. Holy moly. And maybe system building. We'll find out. Please welcome the president of Red Knight Consulting, Chris Placell. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me, guys.
It is awesome to have you back, I should say.
Yeah. We were trying to figure out how long it's been, but a year ago, you guys invited me back. I must have said something okay. I'm excited to tell some anecdotes about system building too. It's exciting.
So, are you a system builder?
No, not in these days. We're very cloud focused. But as you were talking about that, I was thinking those are my roots. That's where I started. Is we even have a now extinct retail store here. It used to be Fry's Electronics, where we used to just go on the weekends and compare motherboards and hard drive sizes and which CPU, and it was the Intel versus AMD who had the hottest new processor of the week battles, and go spend the weekends looking for hardware.
Very cool. So, Chris, you are not new to the show, but we have got many new viewers and listeners since the last time you were on. So, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about you and a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, we are a typical managed service provider. The one thing we do that's a little unique is we focus on a specific kind of area of customer size, small businesses, and we're very cloud focused. So we've aligned very tightly with Amazon Web Services. But we do the typical MSP work, migrations, managing servers, patching, antivirus, and a lot of Amazon Web Services projects and engineering work. We're based here in Southern California. We're working kind of nationwide, and great to have fun, the listener of the podcast.
Very cool stuff. So what else do you do when you're not, reminiscing about Fry's Electronics? And we had a Fry's around here too, and that was a fun place to go, and it is missed sorely. But what else do you do besides reminisce about Fry's?
We recently have kind of all started coming back to the office here, and one of the things that has been very popular is everybody bringing their dogs So we got 3 or 4 dogs running around the office here now, and somebody has a new puppy. So we've got definitely some dog coordination, snacks, and cleanups, and that kind of stuff. So we're a dog friendly office here. Well, we got a puppy in the other room. I'll try and bring during one of the intermissions and hold up for the camera. So it's been a lot of dog herding, and coming back to the office has been a big driving factor for us. And in my free time, we're doing a lot of camping these days now that it's summer, trying to get out and do some hiking and camping.
Oh, fun. So where now do you do like deep into the woods kind of hiking and camping, or like you're in the middle of nowhere, or like campground camping where you have an electrical outlet and a faucet?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. I mean, I've done a ton of that crazy back into the wilderness, top of the mountain stuff, but also I've got younger kids now that are in Cub Scouts, so we're doing the car camping and just basic going to the local campsite and spending the night kind of out barbecuing, campfires.
Very cool. What's your favorite thing to cook over an open flame?
Oh man, I haven't done it in a long time. I really like cooking pineapple upside down cake in a Dutch oven. So you get the fire going really hot, and you get one of these big solid metal looking pans, and you put some pineapple and some cake batter in there and cook it up over the fire.
That sounds good. I know my son's a scout, and they've got like those kind of camp. I don't want to say it's a camp stove, but it's like a camp oven thing where you like clamp it together and it makes like sandwiches and stuff. And they'll put a lot of pizza ingredients in there, and then they'll close it up and they'll cook it the whole over the fire, and it makes like a pizza pocket, which is kind of cool.
Like a panini press that you could put right in the fire, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like, I'll have to find a picture of it to show you over the break, but it's like a big thing that kind of slams together. You know what I mean? That's pretty cool. So that's neat. That's neat that you do a lot of outdoor stuff. It also seems like you're a proficient Lego builder. For those who are watching, you have like a big amount of Legos, and I think a pirate ship behind you. What's that all about?
Yeah. We, during the pandemic, we're just trying to find things to do. I've got a ton of different ones floating around, but it seems like every event was giving away Legos. But our theme is kind of nautical, so we were building these Lego pirate ships, and a lot of crazy knockoff stuff from China. It's amazing what you can get off Alibaba, but we have like a full Optimus Prime truck here. And I got a real kick out of that because the translation on the front of the thing was deformation robot. Instead of transforming robot, it was a deformation robot, which was the Chinese translation it got there on the front.
Oh, that's awesome. Doesn't Lego actually make like a full like Optimus Prime now that you can buy and it like
there's a new transforms? One. Yeah, I saw that. Everybody's going crazy. Even now they have robotic ones that you can actually like drive like an RC car, and it'll then stand up and transform. And the 80s are still well and alive,
It's amazing. What a business model, being able to sell plastic, for $30 an ounce.
Yeah.
I gotta get into that business. Very, very cool stuff. Well, big thanks to Exclusive Networks for sponsoring this episode, so we can kind of do this cool kind of bonus episode for you between our normal ones. Very exciting stuff, and we got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. It's pretty amazing. We're going to be talking about DAAS is what that's called. What does that mean? I guess you're going to have to wait to find out. We're going to talk about that gaining ground for secure hybrid work. We're going to talk about the rise of vertical industry clouds. We're going to talk about working your networks. Does that mean social networks? Does that mean computer networks? Does that mean wide area networks? Does that mean local area networks? I don't know. You're going to have to stay tuned and find out, because it could mean any one of those things. It could mean all of those things. Only Rich Freeman knows. Actually, I know too, because I read ahead. But Rich Freeman knows, and he's going to break that down for you. And Chris is going to have a lot to talk about there. We got an amazing interview also lined up with Mark Leff. He's the director of service sales for North America at Exclusive Networks. We're going to be talking about the skills gap in cybersecurity training and some of the training things that they offer. It is going to be an amazing interview. You are not going to miss it, and you're going to get a lot out of that. So that's coming up. And of course, we're going to have a little bit of fun along the way. So Mr. Freeman, without further ado, tell us about DAAS.
And that's that. For if you're having audio issues there, he didn't ask about dads, as in Father's Day. DAAS, desktop as a service, virtual desktops. You'll hear this referred to in a lot of different ways. I'll set this up too, just by kind of pointing out every time I have an opportunity to speak with Chris, I always kind of chat about cloud related topics, because I think we met each other, Chris, like 6-ish years ago now, and even then you were just at that time kind of going all in on the cloud, and so you are about as early to the cloud first kind of world as anyone I know out there, pretty much. So it's always good basically to flight test some of our content at ChannelPro against your real world experiences. And so what I did, this is a bonus episode of the show, folks. So I went back over the last call it month or two, and I dug up some really interesting stuff that we have published over that time span at ChannelPro that we just didn't have an opportunity to talk about on ChannelPro Weekly. And so now we will, with somebody who can offer some great perspectives on that. And so this first story here is a research related piece that we did about desktop as a service, just to kind of quantify a little bit about where that market stands right now. And I think this is going to be a market for a lot of people in the audience right now that is more kind of top of mind these days, because Microsoft has been pushing more and more heavily in that direction with Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 more recently. So Citrix went out and did a study about this not too long ago. And they went out and they spoke to IT and security leaders at organizations of various sizes. 3/4 of them are saying that desktop as a service is a key enabler for their business. This was a bigger number than I expected to see, given how, from my perspective, how early it is really still in the desktop as a service kind of story right now. This was big too. Over 50% of respondents to this study will implement desktop as a service over the next 18 months, and 81 1/3% plan to increase their investments. So this is not something, we're past the kick the tires kind of stage on this a little bit. And I think people are really starting to go to production, start implementing. A lot of different reasons. There's a lot of research in this study about why that is. What are the advantages of desktop as a service? But first and foremost, and the appropriate thing to highlight on an episode sponsored by Exclusive Networks, is the security, right? If you are storing those desktops centrally, you can manage them centrally. You can control access to them more easily. You can, lock people out of them or get people out of them if they're penetrated more easily. So huge security advantages around desktop as a service. And that was, in fact, the #1 benefit that people in the survey cited. 41% of them said this is important about that. And then another one that people highlighted, and this was something I kind of wanted to ask Chris about. So 41% said increased security, 49 and about 2/3% said cost savings. And I hadn't really thought of that. I thought about this from an administrative efficiency standpoint, and I think about it from a security standpoint. Just kind of curious to get your take. I mean, when you're thinking about desktop as a service, Chris, and when you're talking about it with your customers, where does cost figure into that, and what are sort of the key advantages that you present to them?
Yeah, I think that there's a misunderstanding with cost around virtual desktops a lot of times. Sometimes people just look at the actual hard cost. Hey, I might have to buy a new $1,000 desktop for this person's desk, or I can pay $40 a month for a virtual desktop, right? And they say, look, it's cheaper, we're saving money. Over the long run, right? Every 3 to 5 years, you're buying new hardware for your desktop. So they look at this ROI cycle for that. The problem is there's a lot of soft costs. You still need to treat that virtual desktop like an actual desktop. You have to patch it many times. You have to get antivirus software on it. You're going to take help desk calls from it. You're going to troubleshoot it. Sometimes if people are working from home and it's a bring your own device environment, it may even be more complicated troubleshooting, because now you're incorporating that device that they're running on their home network. You get the call of it's slow. Well, where is it slow? Is it their home network, their home device, or the virtual desktop? In some senses, it makes the troubleshooting easier, because you say, hey, look, here's a clean line of demarcation. This is our corporate IT responsibility. That's your home network. We're not going to help you there. But a lot of businesses, still want to support their employees no matter where they are. So I think there are a lot of maybe unfactored costs in there. I would be surprising. I would be surprised if the costs are less. I think it is the same as a regular desktop, but you do get that shift from CapEx to OpEx, right? Where you're paying for it a little bit over time. The other piece I think that you could blend into that is, look, we were just out at a customer site where the customer had 9-year-old desktops. Well, instead of having to go back and budget and fight for approval to get new desktops, if it's already built into your kind of operating expenses every month, you're always able to update. Maybe that does save you some money in the long run because you're not going to have downtime and outages. There's a lot of different ways to spin that, I think, but I don't think that there's a cost savings really.
This kind of gets to two things that you were kind of touching on there, but the relevance of desktop as a service has grown, I would think, significantly in the last two plus years at this point, because you've got hybrid work out there. There are people who are working from home either all the time or some of the time, and they may be doing that on hardware that isn't the newest or isn't even corporate owned. There's all the anxiety around how you connect people like that securely to resources. So I've got to believe that the desktop as a service story, when you're talking with customers these days, resonates better, that they can appreciate the relevance of it in a way maybe that they couldn't 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think that there's two major factors when we're talking to folks about virtual desktops, and our sales conversations usually are around leading with virtual desktops because of these topics we're talking about. But security, hey, you don't know what that person's home network is. You don't know who else is using that device. It's great that you have a VPN tunnel, but now you've VPN'd some piece of equipment that's not corporate owned into your internal network, and who knows what was on there, right? Protecting it. And a lot of conversations around zero trust also, right? Ensuring that there's security standards being checked at every connection, every login to meet minimum requirements. But I think for us, the security piece is huge, because keeping all of your data and applications in the data center and giving end users a pair of binoculars to view what's going on, but not actually putting that data on their device they're walking around with is big. And now we're starting to see insurance companies or industries come with regulatory requirements, right? We get a lot of questions from folks now. Hey, we just got our insurance renewal, and they're asking all these questions about things of how we, enforce MFA or zero trust. And the answer for us, the way we look at it, is go to a virtual desktop. Also, I think keeping your desktop near where your servers and applications are is important. I jokingly call it the split brain thing. I don't want my servers over here in the cloud and then my local desktop running a fat application through a VPN. You're going to have performance problems. You're relying on your internet connection for that and all the security along the way. When you keep all that bundled together in the data center, I think it makes security a lot easier. It makes your perimeter a lot easier to defend, I think, is probably the short answer there.
The study that we've been talking about here, it talks a lot about the benefits, which we're discussing now, but it also does, address the barriers potentially. And I'll just cite a few examples. Reliance on on-premises equipment, like current day dependence on on-premises equipment. 54% of people cited that. Cost, 48% of people cited that. Sunk investment in infrastructure that can be leveraged, 45%. From your perspective as a ChannelPro, and let's address it from that point of view as opposed to the end user point of view. If people listening right now are thinking, yeah, I ought to be doing more virtual desktop than I am right now, where are the barriers to getting into that market and delivering that service to your customers?
Yeah, I think it's training, right? Which is a big piece of getting your engineers and the folks that would be doing the implementation, your professional services folks, trained and up to date on how to deploy those technologies. Just randomly, we have selected Amazon. We think that's a good fit and it's worked well for us. But all of our folks are trained on that virtual desktop product, how to deploy it, how to troubleshoot it. And I think picking one standard product is good. there's lots of good products in the channel, right? There's many different providers out there, but I would say try and standardize on one so you're not having to support all of them all the time, I think is a key one. And then I think kind of also understanding it's not going to be a revenue source, where if historically you've sold a desktop and a monitor and a mouse and networking gear and made a lot of margin on it, when you start reselling cloud services, the margins are much, much thinner. All of the revenue and profitability is really around professional services. So being able to really understand what a deployment is like, what endpoints are supported is another good one. Can we support Macs? Can you support Linux? Can you support thin clients? And how that might play into the customer's environment, and then understanding how to pivot, and train end users on having multiple desktops, right? I see two start menus. I see two copies of my application. Which is which? You're kind of like how to training and onboarding of customers is an important one. And then for us, I think the key thing, the advice I would give is that leading with virtual desktops has then allowed a lot of other professional services and other sales to ride in the coattails of that. Hey, if you're going to move your desktops, we should also move your servers. Hey, maybe you need a firewall refresh because you need to support people in different places than you ever did before. So it's really been a good way for us to open the door for other sales. And all of the major distributors now all have huge accelerator programs, depending on which major public cloud infrastructure provider you choose. They all have accelerator programs for partners that will get you through all that training. The other piece I would say is maybe there's folks that do it well. There's lots of good services out there. I just don't think that the private cloud is the long-term solution. If you were starting now, I don't know that I'd go rent a giant cage in a data center and buy a bunch of equipment and buy, a hypervisor and buy a VDI solution and try and build it yourself. I think that the hyperscaler cloud providers, the Microsofts and Googles and Amazons of the world, are taking so much market share now that it's just better to kind of buy into one of those. But that is a really big shift in the direction of knowledge and experience and sales cycles and support. If you're a shop that has historically sold, I don't know, a giant $1 million, NetApp VMware Cisco Blade cluster, and now you're selling something for $1,000 a month, right? It's very different, and you've got to kind of adapt all the different teams and departments, not just the engineering group.
There are a couple of different things that came up just now that also came up when you were introducing people to your company at the top of the show that I actually it's not even specific to desktop as a service, but I do want to kind of call it out because I think they're important. So first of all, you were talking about standardization, and I know one of the things that's been very important for your business is you're not going to sell 8 different kinds of this service or that service. That you've really kind of benefited from making a decision, and that's the thing that's how you deliver that, and that makes you more profitable. And I just love to kind of hear you say a little bit more about the importance of that. The other thing, and this might even be for some people in the audience, the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is the overwhelming majority of ChannelPro readers are Microsoft partners, and you made the decision to go all in on the cloud and to do that as an Amazon partner, which is an unusual experience, I think, an unfamiliar experience for a lot of people listening right now. And I'm curious, why you went the Amazon route, but also how that's been kind of working for you.
Yeah, we were pretty fortunate that when we started, I came from another very large MSP and VAR, and they were doing different things that I saw this industry change of these public cloud providers, and they were kind of, no, we're not ready for that. It's too new. We don't want to do that. And so I kind of just ventured out on my own. What is it? The eMyth story, right? Where I can do it better myself, of course, like many founders probably did. And a couple of decisions I made is we wanted to be all cloud. And when we were talking to folks about this 7 years ago, people thought we were crazy. But I wanted to be all cloud, and we had no customers, right? So it was really easy to start and say, we're only going to take customers that are going to be cloud-based. So we didn't have to really pivot or change or redirect customers on buying something new. But the other thing that was really important to me was because I came from an experience where every time a customer called, we had to figure out what firewall do they have, what antivirus product do they have, where are their servers. I wanted to have a standard stack of products. We picked one antivirus provider, one firewall provider, one spam provider, all these different tools that every MSP has in their tool shed. We standardized on one stack. And early on, it was a very difficult conversation when you have no customers to turn customers away because they don't want to buy into your one size fits all stack of products you're using. But that's really helped us in the long run, because now when I hire a new engineer, they're trained on one set of products. When a support call comes in, it's one set of questions we ask to troubleshoot. When we're out selling things, the sales reps have a hard conversation with customers of like, look, this is the way we do things. There's 10 ways to do something in IT, and they're all right, but this is the lens we look through and how we do it. And if that's not the right fit for you, we'll help you find a partner, locally that is. But that's really helped us in the long run to scale, to train a staff, to help optimize support, and to create a good customer experience. Along that route, we were looking for a cloud provider for servers and virtual desktops. I had experience with all of the major providers and Citrix, as a provider of software. And we were looking at them all, trying to figure out which one to standardize on. And we just happened to, it was the right place at the right time, go to Amazon's yearly conference. They call it reInvent, but it's their annual customer and partner conference. And we went there. It was in Las Vegas. And it was one of these aha moments where we just saw like 40,000 people cramming the hallways to learn about this new tech, and people talking about how they're using it. And then the one big thing for us was they had a virtual desktop product that was all standardized. We didn't have to buy licensing. We didn't have to figure out how to right size it. It was, how many users do you have, and how many CPUs do you want in their virtual desktop? Just pick out of a drop down. And that early on helped us because we didn't have to kind of private cloud build it from scratch. And that really opened the door for us to have all these virtual desktop conversations, and learn how we still had to manage them like regular desktops. It was just not needing to build all the infrastructure ourselves or have the super advanced engineers to support it all. We now had a partner in this, which in our case happened to be Amazon. At that point, 6-7 years ago, the Azure stuff, the virtual desktop, all that didn't really exist yet. It was very, very young. So just the momentum that Amazon had, the speed that they were developing new stuff, looked good to us, and we jumped in with both feet. And we've got all of our engineers trained on, all the engineering certs. It works well. Over the last couple of years, 3-4 years, Microsoft has caught up quite a bit. Google's caught up quite a bit. They now all have virtual desktop products. They all have channel-friendly partner programs. Now the playing field is a lot more complicated. There's a lot more players on the field. They're all good. You have to find the right one that's good for your business, that you feel like you can be a good advocate for and that you believe in. Run your own business on it, right? Those kinds of things. And it's worked out well for us.
So there's certainly a lot of pros to the whole desktop as a service thing. We've talked about a lot of those where it makes sense. It talks about barriers, but in the barriers, it didn't always necessarily talk about situations where it doesn't make sense. And I think there are some situations where it doesn't make sense. What would you say some of those are?
Oh yeah, we've run across a few of these. Some of them seem like barriers to entry where there's complicated, unique customer things that they're running their environment where they say it has to be on premise, it has to be directly connected, and we've worked through several of those, right? Which is sort of not exactly the question you're asking, but for example, we have financial services customers that have these like Bloomberg terminals, those fancy trading desk things, and there's a special keyboard that has to be plugged in with a key, and everybody said you couldn't do it. We've been able to kind of conquer some of those things, but there are still great examples of things that don't work. Folks that are really, really heavily into design, right? If you're running CAD, there's solutions for it. It does work, but it's not as precise and nimble as having it on a $5,000, $10,000 desktop sitting right in front of you. Having equipment that has to directly interface with PCs. We see this sometimes in manufacturing, sometimes with processing plants, sometimes where there's robotics or machines connected that have to make very fast decisions about something going down a production line, maybe where it has to kick something out, or healthcare products being made where there's real-time sensors happening for temperature, where real-time decisions have to be made. You probably don't want to put that in a virtual desktop because you lose your internet connection. It has bigger implications. Healthcare, there seem to be some challenges hooking up big healthcare machines. Hey, this machine just did a CAT scan and it wants to dump its giant file somewhere. There are workarounds for all that stuff, but there definitely are some scenarios where it doesn't work. Very, very poor internet connections, right? Hey, I'm working and I'm offline all the time. Virtual desktops don't work. I would say folks that are the biggest gotchas are usually heavy graphics, AutoCADs, video editing, illustrations, where just that tactile interface of like, I want to draw something with a stylus on my pad right in front of me. There's just a millisecond of lag that you would notice you were typing in Word or Excel, but you would notice if you were, drawing a portrait or doing animation, building an architectural drawing, things like that.
Yeah, very interesting. Interesting stuff. Well, I mean, it's certainly a growing market, and as you said, it may not make sense in all cases, but there are a lot of cases where it does, and I really love the way you put it. It may not necessarily save you money. That's not really the value proposition of desktop as a service. It really is more about some of the benefits that you get around, security and not having to ship hardware to remote locations and all. There's a lot of benefits around there that I think are really interesting to point out. So cool article, Rich. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
It's important to back up. It's important to back them up too. You got to back that DAAS up.
Well, I love the way you put it too. It's like, even though it's in the cloud, even though it's virtual, you have to treat it like a computer, right? Yep. Everything that you do with a normal computer, you do with that one. It just so happens to run elsewhere, right? Like the processing happens elsewhere. But it's just like if you have servers in the cloud, you got to treat them just like any other server. You got to back them up. You got to protect them all in the same way. So, sorry, Rich, was there something else you wanted to add?
No, I was going to say we can move on, but I will quickly point out, to your point, Matt, this is not just a sort of standalone sales opportunity. I'm selling you virtual desktops. This is a managed services opportunity because those virtual desktops have to be managed like any other virtual desktop. So this is recurring revenue, not just in terms of whatever you make on the licensing, but really in terms of the management smarts that you bring to the customer.
Yeah, and a great opportunity too for those who don't do hardware, because we've had conversations with many MSPs who don't even deal with hardware. Now they don't need to, but they can still sell them the hardware in a sense and the services on top of it. So that's kind of cool as well. So lots of neat stuff. Rich, this is not new. There's been vertical industry clouds for a while. What are we talking about here? Or am I missing something?
This is a little bit new. I think there's some truth to what you're saying, but this is a little bit new. So every year, the January issue of ChannelPro contains our sort of year ahead preview story that I'll do. And this year, I was talking to some cloud computing experts to forecast the year ahead in cloud. And there was an analyst at Forrester in particular who said one of the big trends that they're looking at right now is what they call vertical industry clouds. And I kind of wanted to come back and dive into that deeper because we sort of mentioned it in this preview story, but we couldn't really talk about it at any kind of length. So recently, in a recent issue of the magazine, we had a story that talked about this a little bit more. And the definition of a vertical industry cloud, even within this story, it varies a little bit. And there are definitely instances where really what we're talking about is software as a service that addresses a vertical industry and its needs. And so Salesforce has a financial services cloud, a health cloud, a nonprofit cloud. Oracle last year spent $28.3 billion. So they clearly see a pretty big opportunity here buying a cloud-based healthcare software maker called Cerner that's been in the industry a long time. I think the part of this story, though, that is particularly interesting to me is if you think about AWS or Microsoft Azure as this sort of blank canvas that you can paint anything you want, you can do anything there. That's really great. The flexibility of that is really great. But if you are a ChannelPro who specializes in, say, medical practices, you work in the healthcare space, it certainly would be advantageous to have access to a version of Azure that is sort of, let's say, pre-assembled, pre-configured a little bit for clients in that area. it's been tooled up with some functionality around some of the regulatory issues that you might deal with. There are other aspects of it from a behind the scenes kind of performance aspect that understand, let's just say that the particular issues you run into in the cloud around digital imaging and so on. And so that's the kind of thing that I think is newer. And so Microsoft has a product called Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare that is obviously based on Azure, and it kind of gives you that head start. You can kind of do a lot of different things with it, but you're not starting from scratch. And there are other examples of this out there. And, Chris, you were talking about like dealing with Bloomberg terminals and how the financial services companies rely on stuff like that. Another thing that financial services companies these days in particular are really focused on is performance, because so much of what those people do is about, speed trading and crunching numbers faster than the competitors and so on. It's like performance matters a lot. There are vertical industry clouds out there that are backed by specialized hardware that isn't necessarily available everywhere, but because the maker of the cloud, the provider of the cloud understands in this vertical, you're going to face this issue, and we have sort of, hardware supplemented our platform to make sure that we can accommodate that. So it's a different kind of public cloud play, basically, that is a little bit easier to get into, a little bit easier to tailor to a particular industry for people. And there are a lot of people in the audience right now who have particular verticals that they zero in on.
Yeah, as you were talking about it, I wonder, there's probably some different buckets of segments of what people are doing here, right? Some of it could just be marketing, right? For example, Cerner has existed for a long time. They've had a hosted offering. Now they're just labeling it, a healthcare cloud. Did they really do anything different, or are they just labeling it to get the vertical attention, right? Just like we tell MSPs, specialize in a vertical and understand that industry, and you'll get more attention. Because I think customers do want, everything else being equal, they want to buy from people that understand their business and their industry, whether that's healthcare or a manufacturing plant or someone that makes clothing. If you know their industry and speak their language, then all of a sudden they're much more likely to buy from you. So is there some of this going on? Because when I looked at that article, some of those specialty vertical clouds are really backed by Azure or AWS. So are they really using those things and just putting a marketing label on it? Or are some of these vendors too just really refactoring their applications and changing it from a client server app to a SaaS app, and now saying we have a specialized cloud just for our product or our industry, when really all they do was SaaSify their product? Is it just another case of the IT industry relabeling things that have existed for a long time? That being said, I have two examples of where we've run into this. Again, we're looking through the AWS lens. It's where we have our experience. I'm sure other folks have this too, but in AWS, they have something called GovCloud, which is supposed to be a more secure, more locked down feature. It's still the AWS cloud, but they turn on some extra security and auditing features so they can meet specific government regulatory checkboxes to be compliant for certain things. The funny thing is we get a lot of customers saying, hey, we need to be in GovCloud. And when you actually peel back the layers, they are, well, we're a government agency, so we should be in GovCloud. I'm like, well, there's actually a check, and they won't actually let you in. You don't meet the requirements, right? So some of that is they're building momentum just by branding it a cloud for a certain industry. But for example, CMMC compliance is a big thing that's coming up. Everybody's wondering about how are we going to be compliant? What are all the things that we're going to have to do to become compliant for this industry regulatory compliance thing? It's good practices, right? But for a small company, they may not have the staff or the energy or the financial backing to do all these compliance things that are required to do business with government entities that need to require CMMC compliance. We're now starting to see folks that have secure enclaves of hosted environments that are already CMMC compliant, and you can just subscribe to it one user at a time. Well, all they're doing is putting a virtual desktop up and presenting it out to folks, and then they're doing the border, and they're saying, hey, we're a specialized cloud just for CMMC compliance. So I think there's a mixed bag all over the board of what's happening there.
So so it's a lot of, seems like some of it is just branding. Like, you have like a food item and they slap a new and improved or better taste on it, even though it's the same thing. It's how much of that is really the case, do you think?
I just was kind of looking at it over the last couple of days because I knew we'd be talking about it. I think that there's, probably 20 to 50% of what you see is some of that. You guys probably have better exposure to that than I would. What do you guys think?
Rich, is Microsoft putting the new and improved taste on things, or are they actually improving the taste?
Yes, I think in that particular instance, I actually think they are improving the taste, but I do think there's a lot of folks who are, I think Chris is absolutely right that there are a lot of folks who are kind of glomming on to, this concept that's going to make what they've been offering before sound more appealing and worth more. And so, yeah, you're definitely seeing some of that. But I do think there's this sort of new species of cloud that's coming along that is somewhere in between infrastructure as a service and software as a service. And that's where in my mind, that's where Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare is an example of several.
Very, very interesting. Well, there's a little bit more in this article to read and a couple links in it that you should go check out. And we will put this in the show notes for this bonus episode of ChannelPro Weekly. So if you want to go to channelpronetwork.com and find the show sheet for this special bonus episode sponsored by our friends at Exclusive Networks, we'll put the links in there. You can go check it out and you get all the details. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, the subscribe button, the comment button. There's a lot of buttons. Just press them all and magical things will happen. And leave a comment. That's always good. But open the description area in YouTube. We'll put all links for you there as well. If you're on your phone, if you're listening on your phone, you can open up the description area. Usually the links are in there for you as well. And you can go and check all this out. And because we're just kind of touching the very high level stuff on these stories and kind of giving our thoughts, but there's usually a lot more detail that you'll want to make yourself aware of. And that's how you find it. We've got one other story we're gonna move to, and that is called working your networks. So we drove to the beginning of the show. Is this social networks? Is it computer networks? Rich, what kind of networks are we working?
We are talking about human networks here, relationship networks, basically, because we took it as a given at ChannelPro that pretty much anyone who would be listening to or watching ChannelPro Weekly knows all about the kind of networking that involves connecting PCs and servers and so on. The form of networking, basically, where you are meeting people and making relationships and using that to increase the success of your business. That's maybe a less familiar topic, not terra firma, and there are probably a lot of questions about not only why would I do that, but how do I go about doing that? And so we had a story. It appeared in a recent issue of the magazine called "Working Your Networks," and we were not talking about the IT networks. We were talking about networking, and I think the first point made in the article, and it's an important one, is not to think about networking as a sales activity. This is about, meeting people and cultivating relationships. And in fact, somebody helpfully in the article defines networking as long-term relationship building. And somebody else quoted in the story, I think very helpfully, says, think of this as everything that happens before the sale and after the sale. And so let's talk a little bit about the before the sale aspect of that. So networking isn't about sales. It's not about going out and introducing yourself to people and immediately trying to sell them stuff, but it can be about marketing to the degree that you are meeting people and you're introducing them to who you are and what you do and establishing trust with them and doing this face to face. This over time can help you develop leads, basically, grow your customer base. And then, once you have done that and you have established a commercial relationship with people who you have added to your network, continuing to network with them and through them and let them do the same to you is a great way to maintain that relationship and increase its stickiness. So this is before the sale. This is after the sale. Now, where do you do it? How do you do it? In terms of where a lot of the places you can potentially do it will spring to mind right away. I mean, you can go to Chamber of Commerce meetings or other local organizations. Pretty much anywhere you crowds gather and you can imagine meeting people is potentially a place to go. But a couple of different people quoted in the story sort of pointed out that, especially if you're a little bit anxious about, and I think a lot of people are anxious about going to events where they don't know people going in and introducing themselves to strangers and so on. A great way to network is to actually host events of your own. I mean, that is a networking opportunity for you, and you can get MDF and support from vendors and so on. And we think of that as a lead gen opportunity, and it is, but it's also a networking opportunity if you use it that way and think about it that way. In terms of how to do this, because that not everybody, maybe most people listening, watching right now are not extroverts. I know I'm not. But think about this a little bit the way, the dating advice always goes, that you want to be interested in whoever you are talking to as opposed to yourself. And so just be interested in people and ask questions about them and who they are and what they do. And it's a great way to kind of get a conversation going and find opportunities for you to help people understand a little bit more about you as well. One other thing that I'll bring up here from the story, because this is an issue that's sort of familiar to Matt and myself, because ChannelPro does virtual events, and especially in the last few years, we've been doing a lot of virtual events. And I would like to think, patting Matt and myself on our back here a little bit, that we do a very good job with that, with respect to planning and delivering content and keeping the audience engaged in those sessions and really sending people back to work after the event feeling like it was time well spent. But I will say that the thing, the nut that nobody in our industry or other industries has really cracked with virtual events is that networking piece, the hallway conversations, the random encounters, the face-to-face aspect of it. I think virtual events, especially, they are here to stay. They're hugely valuable. Everybody, is probably attending them and should keep attending them, but they're really never going to be a substitute for in-person events entirely in terms of that relationship building that you can do face to face. It just so far, at least, I don't think anyone has done a great job of doing that online.
Chris, comment.
I was thinking about a couple of things as you were talking through that. I think, everyone jokes about the most valuable part of any conference you go to is like what happens in the lobby or the lobby bar, or, outside of the actual conference halls and the classrooms. It's the networking. But, a lot of folks, you only get what you give, right? You've got to be outgoing. You've got to kind of fake it and get out there and talk to some folks, or have a pocket full of bad dad jokes to tell people or whatever, and kind of make people laugh and start little conversations to get to know people. I was thinking about, coincidentally, one of the ChannelPro conferences I was at, I met a gentleman named Ro, who was a SharePoint developer. And then when we needed a SharePoint developer, I thought, I'm going to call him, and we've sent a couple of 3-4 customers over his way, right? And if he wasn't there, and if I wasn't there, and we hadn't started a conversation together, we wouldn't be doing that. And to build a partnership network like that. So I think that's valuable. I think being, other than on the trade show circuit, being in your local community and networking, it's challenging, man. I've made all the mistakes. I've gone to all the Chamber of Commerce meetings. I've gone to all the paid mixers where you go to and stuff. And if you are really talented and can work those rooms, there are opportunities there. But man, it's I'm like you, Rich. I'm super introverted, so by the time I finish that, I'm like ready for a nap at the end of it. But I think that there are folks that are really well accustomed to it. And I think in the article, there was a mention of one of the companies had a person just dedicated. They found an extroverted person, and hey, like, that's your thing. Go work the local community. And there's a guy here I'm in Orange County, California, in Southern California. There's a big marketing company that's here, and they have one guy. His name is Sven, and everybody knows Sven. I mean, you look at LinkedIn, he's connected to everybody. He's at every event, every trade show. But that's literally his job for those guys. But man, when you see someone do it well, everybody goes, oh yeah, I know Sven, I know Sven. Like he works his magic through all of Orange County here where we are. It's amazing. And he knows everybody who's everybody in there, and they get a ton of business out of it. So there is proof that if you like lean in and really do it, it pays off. Man, it feels like such a distraction though when you're like, man, there's a customer calling with a outage over here, and there's a deal that's going to close over here. I don't have time to stop and do that. But it's one of those things where you have to do it kind of like saving for retirement. You got to just have a constant drip of, go to an event a month, or go to something online once a month, or host something once a quarter or something to keep that up.
Chris, I'm really interested in the impact of social media on society as a whole, and has social networking, in the sense of in terms of social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, has that impacted people's ability to network in person? Do they find that it's just a replacement for that style of networking? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your age bracket, right? I kind of always joke, like I don't look at Instagram or Facebook, and you can see the people around you always like with the phones in front of them all day and all night. I think that there is definitely an opportunity there to network that way, to have a good social media presence, to have constant drips of content going there that gets pushed out to these social networks where people continually can consume, messaging about that. We don't do the best job of that, but there are companies that just have that down to a science, and I think that feeds back into your Google search or SEO or whatever, right? It's a whole marketing landscape there that you have to manage. I look at that kind of like websites or business cards. You don't really need a website or a business card, but if you don't have one, people look at you kind of funny, like you don't have, what kind of business are you? Like same thing with a social media presence, like you don't really need it, but if you don't have it, then people kind of look at you strange. I think the worst thing you can do is start up one of those things, a blog, a social media thing, and do one post, and then 5 years have gone by and not do anything else. So I think it's one of those consistent drip things that you got to keep a finger on to keep growing.
Very interesting. So I'm sure you scanned through this. Any other things in this article that you found interesting that you want to highlight?
I did see somewhere in there that there was a mention of someone who's doing training for social skills. I didn't catch the person's name, but the thing that stuck out to me is that they do STEM focused training for entrepreneurs who come from a STEM focused background, which I think is just a nice way of saying like they help nerds be more social and help talk to people. But I think that's an interesting concept of, for those folks that aren't the most outgoing and trained on this, that there are classes you can take, just like for anything, to learn this stuff. And it is you're not born with it. You got to practice it and go out, and just like dating, you can get trained to have better conversation or be focused on the other person, like Rich was saying, and that really helps when you go to these types of events.
Yeah, for sure. Rich, anything else you want to highlight before we move on to our interview?
Just a thought that popped into my head as Chris was talking there. I mean, a lot of what we're saying here applies. It's very reminiscent of advice that we give at ChannelPro about sales, right? That it's not something that you're born knowing how to do, and you have to learn how to do it. And there are people who can help you learn how to do it better. And but that there is also this reality that if this is not what you enjoy doing, if you really can't do it, there is also the opportunity to hire somebody or find somebody within your organization who is more suited to it as well. So yeah, I mean, for a lot of the same reasons, a lot of what applies to sales, appears to apply to networking too.
You got to have a face. You got to have a face everybody loves in order to do the networking thing. So make sure you find your face, if that makes sense. That's our advice today. Find your face. With that, really interesting stuff. Great stuff. We'll put this a link to this article in the show notes as well. Go and check it out, because there's a lot in here and a lot of really good sound advice about networking that you'll definitely want to check out. And of course, if you want to learn a little bit more about social networking, I encourage you to check out one of the upcoming ChannelPro SMB forum events. The next one is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And why would I suggest that, Rich?
because you care about and love our audience deeply, and you want them to attend events where they're going to learn all sorts of things that are going to make them more successful in their business. Like the event we're doing in Charlotte, or the event we'll be doing early in September in the Washington, D.C. area, or the event we'll be doing early in November right in Chris's backyard in Southern California. And you go to any of those events, you're going to get great content about security. I'm moderating a session called the Security Slam, inspired by Poetry Slams, where we're going to be telling real-world security stories, which are both very entertaining but actually very instructive. We're talking about cloud here. There's a session about opportunities in Microsoft Azure. There's a session modeled after a game show, the TV's dating game, you might remember, all about recruiting and retaining employees, and navigating the M&A landscape. All the stuff that's really top of mind for you right now, folks. We've got really, really great content for you at these events. So the next one, which is coming right up at the beginning of August in Charlotte, North Carolina, is your next opportunity to attend. But you can learn more about that one and the other ones that we do, and virtual events that we do at events.channelpronetwork.com, events.channelpronetwork.com.
Check it out. And if you go, you can network in person, in real life, talk to actual human beings standing in front of you, and you can put all of these things into practice. And that's important stuff. So come and join us there. We want to see you. With that, we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we are going to be joined by Mark Leff. He's the Director of Service and Sales for North America Exclusive Networks. We're going to have a fascinating conversation about the skills gap in cybersecurity and some of the training things that they offer that you absolutely want to know about, and could even potentially resell as we kind of get to it as well. So really great interview. Don't miss it. We will be back in just a moment. Welcome back to part 2 of this bonus episode of ChannelPro Weekly, sponsored by Exclusive Networks. You know, Exclusive Networks is the first and currently only cybersecurity distributor authorized in training for Fortinet. Given the shortfall in skills around cybersecurity, there's an increasing need and importance for this kind of training. Now, here to talk about that is Mark Leff, Director of Service Sales for North America at Exclusive Networks. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today.
It's a long title, lots of S words in there that'll throw you off every now and then. But it's a pleasure to have you on with us here to talk. First, before we get started, though, and kind of dive into some of the topics around training that we're going to be talking about, tell us a little bit more about you and your role at Exclusive Networks.
I joined the company back in February. I've been in high tech for over 25 years. I've been with a few startups. I had 2 stints, the better part of 20 years with Cisco Systems, and I had a stint with Juniper Networks in between those 2 stints. I spent the year before coming to Exclusive with Fidelis Cybersecurity out of Bethesda, Maryland. And I'm really pleased to be with Exclusive Networks. I am based out of New York. My responsibility is building a service sales organization and doing it for North America.
Very cool. So you bounced around the industry quite a bit with some of these larger kind of networking firms. How long were you at Cisco and Juniper?
Better part of 20 years. So it was 18 and a half years between my 2 stints with Cisco Systems, and it was about 1.5 years with Juniper. Very
cool. What kind of got you going down the high-tech networking kind of path?
Well, to me, I've always felt that technology, if you look at the future and it's continuing to evolve, and I go back a ways when I got into high tech initially, how can we really make a difference, not just in people's lives, but how do we impact business? And it's always fascinated me when you look at the technical side of how companies utilize technology, and it's amazing what it could do, but you got to take it. And my philosophy has been, it's great to have technology, but it's got to translate into business value. And putting those 2 pieces together is something that's not only fascinated me, but something that I find very rewarding as well, too. And I think that that's something that's very much needed, because if companies are going to make an investment, what business problem am I looking to solve? And particularly if you look at the partners that Exclusive Networks has, that we work with, what are we doing to help ensure that they're delivering value to their customers as well, too? And business value is really what the name of the game is here. And, that's also where, and I'm a big believer also in training and skills development. And I think we're all aware of like the skills gap that there is out there within cybersecurity as well, too. This is there's just so much of this when you look at just the value of services and the impact that it can have, okay, and the impact training can have. That's what really has me excited about being part of the company.
So and it sounds like Exclusive is kind of the first and only cybersecurity distributor that is authorized for Fortinet training. So let's kind of dive down that. How did that kind of come about, and what does that mean for folks?
Well, what that means is, if you think of what Exclusive Networks does, we have offices in 43 countries, and we have customers in 170 countries altogether. So we got a global footprint. I mean, the company is over is a $3 billion entity, but the company itself in North America is continuing to grow. FineTech was the name of the company that was acquired a few years back that has become the North American region for Exclusive Networks. Now, how this all came about is that both entities have done significant business with Fortinet. That's number one. Okay. But number two, how this all came about is that the Exclusive Networks mantra has always been to add value. So, there are distributors that are in the business that do a really good job of making product available, moving boxes, if you would. But our mantra basically is we're going to add value. And what does that mean specifically? Understanding, if we're working with our partners, what's the business problem, as I stated before, that we're trying to solve? What's the right solution? So if it's a combination of services, training, and the right hardware, how do you put the right pieces together as well so we could be consultative, we could be trusted advisors for our partners? So how this all came about is that this now represented an opportunity, and we do have authorized training centers around the world. We have them in Singapore, we got them in Germany, we got them in the United Kingdom. The timing was right now to have it for the United States. So because there's such a demand for cybersecurity talent and how that needs to be developed, the opportunity was just perfect in terms of alignment with what Fortinet needs and the reach to our partner community, as well as also our ability to be able to reach out and add that additional value and make that a part of our services portfolio as well.
Yeah, I really want to start out on that skills gap topic, because I think that explains why what you folks are doing here is both so important and so timely right now. And there was a study, it came out last October, and I think it sort of perfectly illustrates the point. And this is almost funny, actually. So this is from ISC Squared, very respected cybersecurity organization. They do a workforce study every year. Latest edition came out last October, and it was like, good news, folks. The skills gap between the number of security professionals we need in the world and the number we have has decreased in the last year for the second year in a row. Sounds great. It decreased in the year before the study came out from 3.1 million to 2.7 million people. We are 2.7 million people short of what we need in order to accommodate the security need out there. That's like a good-sized city. So talk a little bit about how that affects the MSPs and the solution providers in our audience out here, and the role that training can play in addressing those pain points.
Well, yeah, it's a great point you're making. I mean, but just because the number of open positions may be going down, it's 2.7 million to me is still a very high number, very significant. I will argue, however, that the demand is still exceeding the resources that we have. And, you take a look, for example, like when companies are trying to mitigate cybersecurity risks, they could be dwell time, which even for a company that has 250 employees or less and they're strapped for resources, I think the statistic I have is that it's at least 50 to 51 days, or maybe even more, that you could have an attacker that's just laying dormant or is just not, you don't even know is in the system. So it's not dormant. I mean, they could be doing their damage. How do you identify them, and how do you take as proactive a stance or as responsive a stance as you possibly can? Okay, be it ransomware, which is something else we're seeing increasing significantly as well. So the value of training, and there's huge demand for this. The value of training is how do I take number one, how do I keep up with the mitigation of these cybersecurity risks? Which number two leads to the fact that, well, what's happening? How are we filling, or how fast can we fill that 2.7 million? And part of our philosophy as a company is that the feeling is we need to be developing it also from the ground floor with the younger generation. We're very proud of the fact that we have a facility open at the California Polytechnic Institute. And what we're doing there is we have a full facility We have 12 students that we call associates. 9 of them, I think, have already passed various levels of certification. It's the future. I mean, we need to be able to build and develop that younger talent as well, too. In fact, I'll also point out, and I'm proud to say that Exclusive Networks is part of a consortium together with advisory firm Night Dragon and Next Gen Cyber Talent. We're putting together in this consortium, raising $1 million to invest in cybersecurity education. And this is not just in the United States. This is worldwide as well, too. There's a firm or an entity that we're working with over in Europe. I think it's Guardia, I believe, is the name of the firm, that they're based in France, and the Cybersecurity Coalition in Belgium. This is now worldwide. I mean, what we're seeing with demand, it's not just the United States, it's a global demand as well, too. And we certainly know that much of the risks that are coming are not just domestic, they're also coming from international sources as well, too. So again, I'll argue that maybe the number of jobs, open jobs may be going down, but 1, it's a huge number. 2, we've got huge demand. And how do you keep up with that demand? And part of the strategy is provide training to make sure that, companies want to retain their employees. So it's really key to also make sure you're continuing to develop those skills. That's number 1. And number 2, as I indicated before, start with the younger generation and start to build that kind of talent as well.
One thing that you could also do is couldn't we also like use those nefarious hackers tools against them and encrypt their hard drives, and then in order to unlock it, force them to work for you for 10 years?
I know of companies that I believe are doing that within the business as well, too. And that's an interesting kind of an approach. But you know what? I mean, and that being said, I think going back to at least the fundamentals of understanding, if you have a company like Fortinet and you look at their security fabric and you look at their technology, how do I most effectively apply FortiGuard firewalls? How do I most effectively utilize them? You could start with, the training that we are going to be delivering starts with the fundamentals of how do I configure and manage a FortiGuard firewall, to also understanding the infrastructure and taking advantage or leveraging the more advanced capabilities. So I think it's a great point that you're making, but I think I want to make sure that everybody understands, let's not lose sight of the fact that there are fundamentals that we want to make sure that we're addressing. And I think that's so key in continuing the development of skills for all of us.
So
Mark, are you guys focused on the commercial market or government? Because I know recently there's been a lot of talk about this executive order. I had to actually Google it and look it up. It's Executive Order 14028. But it's around improving national security, right? So there's all these government mandates coming down the pipe at the federal level that's getting pushed down to the state level for all of the government organizations to, turn on MFA and have zero trust and start following all these security best practices. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a huge demand there. I didn't know if you guys were thinking about that or involved in that at all.
We are, and we definitely are thinking about that. I mean, a lot of our footprint today has been in the commercial, the small and medium business segment. But there's growing business also we're looking at in terms of enterprise and government. I mean, when you talk about that, and I think about the bill that President Biden just signed, I think it was about a week ago. It was or maybe a few days back. And this bill is also alluding to the fact that they've got to take their cybersecurity talent and rotate them from one agency to the other within the federal government within itself. So the federal, that is basically saying that the federal government is even strapped for and sees the need to continuing to not only develop skills, and this is where they're diversifying the skill sets of these individuals. I think it's a really smart move, but it's also really calling out the fact that, again, there's a shortage, where that's concerned. So, we're seeing this. I would say the simple answer is it's across all those segments, and it's growing across all segments as well, too. Because, if I go back to that dwell time stat, and in small to medium businesses, it's typically about 50 days. There's a study that says that. Within enterprises, it's less. I think it's maybe 15 to 20 days is what I think the stat is. But that could be 15 to 20 days. That's 15 to 20 days too long. You're a financial institution, and you just have one compliance violation that can cost you millions, and much less impact your brand and your reputation as well, too.
One of the things that we've started doing as an MSP is when we sell technology we work with commercial customers more into a commercial business, we kind of include the training when we sell the product, right? So in this case, what we're talking about is, hey, we've sold them a Fortinet. We would also include Fortinet training. I believe that there's 2 reasons for that. One, I don't think internal IT folks have as easy access to training budgets for approvals. And when we include it in the projects, they get very excited about it, right? So it's half a sales tool. Hey, let's close this deal because then you'll get trained as part of this project. But also, I believe when we do projects, it keeps that customer very sticky as well. Because if you just turn something on in their environment and hand it over versus have 2 of their engineers trained at the same time, that's a mandatory part of the project. That customer comes back and buys more. Those internal resources are driving demand. They're exploring it. They're excited about it. Has any of that played a part in why you're driving all these training classes, or is any of that cross?
Very much so. You know, when you think about being services led, you think about having training. That's partner loyalty. I mean, this is something that I'm very passionate about over a number of years, because if partners want to just simply buy, you know, they want to buy boxes, they want to buy hardware, that could be a commodity, or that is a commodity if you think about it. Whereas, you know, if I'm doing the training and I'm helping a partner understand, how do I, at the very least, if I could diagnose a problem, so if I have to escalate it and I need a support engineer on the back end to help me understand what the issue is, at least I'm properly diagnosing it. We're learning from it as well, and we're making more efficient use of the time that it takes to resolve that issue. And we're getting that issue resolved within a shorter period of time. And I've worked with stats throughout my career that have proven that out, you know, whether it's mean time to resolution for a support issue as an example, or am I configuring the right security policies to understand what's really needed within a particular organization's environment. Partners will come back. They will come back to anyone who could provide those kinds of resources, and it drives loyalty. And I think it's exactly to the point that I believe your question was making as well, too. Absolutely.
And so, I mean, it makes me curious, is the training that you're doing with Fortinet a essentially resellable offering? Is this something that, because co-managed IT is so big right now with MSPs, more ChannelPro readers are, like Chris, are working with organizations big enough to have their own IT organization benefit from training. Is this something that folks in the audience here can build into a deal and increase the value that they're delivering to the customer and potentially the size of the deal?
Rich, I would encourage that. Absolutely, totally, because, you know, if we're adding value for our partners, we want our partners to pass that value along to their customers, and that's where the rubber meets the pavement. So, I mean, it's, if you're selling a solution if a partner is selling a solution to their customer, and if they want to get there, if they're providing the support themselves, one scenario I'm thinking of is if they're going to be making money, or if they're selling their own services, and that's how they're driving margins in their P&L as well, too. They've got to think about loyalty from their customer perspective. How do I drive customer sat? Maybe even teach them how to diagnose a problem, and when they escalate it, that's where they're delivering more value as well, too. So it's not just from the partner perspective, but also from the end user perspective as well. And I've already seen opportunities where, again, to bundle something like this makes complete sense, because, again, you're adding value. And again, you know, this is, I think, called out when we look at the skills gaps as well, too, that we see with, you know, with cybersecurity. This is a significant, or one great way to be able to mitigate that gap.
And you touched on this before, but I thought it was a great point, and it's worth reiterating, is that there are, you know, multiple forms of value here. And one form of value, whether we're talking about increasing the skills of your technical employees today, or helping your client increase technical skills that they have in their technical employees, is just, you are investing in people. They will see that and see their knowledge growing, and that you are willing to invest in them. And so it helps with retention at a time when recruiting is a huge problem, and retention is a big problem as well. Here is a way to get better at security that will also help you hang on to people you value. I think that's huge.
We have a partner advisory council that we held just a few weeks ago as an organization out on the West Coast. And this came up, and we were having a conversation focused on services, and this came up within the conversation. It's a challenge that everybody's having today, and not just in high tech. We're seeing it in many different segments, you know, across the board. But that being said, you know, if you take a look, and there are stats, in fact, there's one that comes from Stanford Research, where I think it's 85% of job success comes from ongoing training, development, soft skills, technical skills. You want to feel, and it's more important for someone to feel, am I really getting fulfillment out of my job? Am I learning something new? Am I really making impact and adding value? And I think that that particular stat really calls it out significantly. And when you talk about, you talk about retention, training should be one of the core elements that is at the center of a retention strategy, continued development that goes even beyond the technical skills that we're talking about. It could be soft skills as well too, continuous learning. Because I could tell you, I've learned this throughout my career as well too, that ongoing training, even if it's small nuggets of training, which could be 10, 15 minutes, for example, of something new that you learn in the course of a given day, no matter how busy we are, this is going to help broaden our perspective, lead to higher employee satisfaction, and I believe, very much to your point, mitigate the retention challenge that we are seeing that everybody is facing today.
Another thing I want to come back to a little bit. So, I mean, you folks at Exclusive Networks, in partnership with other organizations, are making investments in educating the sort of cybersecurity workforce of tomorrow, which is like a great thing. But, retention is hard. Recruiting is hard as well. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to use training to ease that recruiting burden, basically, by finding people who are new to the industry, getting them trained. And so instead of having to go out and hire somebody who already has the skill set and is, hard to find and very expensive and so on, can you find younger people who are newer to the industry, who are maybe a little bit easier to recruit, and use a course or courses like the ones that you folks offer to make them ready for that security position you have?
There are a number of answers I can give to that, but I'm going to just give you one specific answer. I think the Cal Poly example, the facility we have, is a shining example of that, something we're so proud of. And to be able to develop the cyber skills that are needed, with individuals that are in college and trying to figure, and looking at, what do I do next? What's going to happen after I get my degree? My daughter just graduated college, but she knew what she wanted to do, and she laid her own, she laid her own path out. But, sometimes not everybody has that kind, not everybody may have that opportunity necessarily. And for training to be able to pave the way, to be able to say, okay, help me understand some of the intricacies within cybersecurity itself, and to be able to provide that kind of training and start with foundational principles and really help open up the eyes of a younger generation. That, to me, I think is really the core, would be the focal point that I would answer the question with. And the Cal Poly facility we have, like I said, shining example of that. Because when you develop the skills when you're younger, this is where then you start to build a cadence. And even if those students decide to move on and go to another organization, the fact is you have a methodology in place that we know works as well too, because I think individuals are going to tend to be more attracted to a company that provides training types of resources and ongoing education than those that won't. And, I've seen from days that I did sales enablement, going back into my past as well too, that stats definitely, verify that, and, and shows how that plays out as well too.
Mark, so I was just peeking at the Fortinet training paths because I wasn't familiar with them. And I think it's interesting to point out that many manufacturers have training on their product. Here's what button to do to configure something. Here's how to plug something in or route something. But I noticed that the Fortinet certification path has 8, 9 tiers here, and it's about overall general network security, best practices, industry trends, what different terminology means. It's not just around the product and how to install it and configure it. And I think that's super unique. That's not something I've seen in the industry before. So I just wanted to highlight that. But is there, do you have any feedback on why did they structure it that way, or how that plays into what you guys are doing with these 8 tiers, NSE 1 through 8, it looks like?
I think it's a brilliant strategy. I know exactly what you're talking about, because when you start at the NSE 1 to 3 level, I mean, this is where they're talking about the security fundamentals. And it's really about educating, whether it's a new generation of talent or even those that are looking to refine our skills as well, too, to help understand. And if I'm looking at this from the Fortinet standpoint, how does my fabric, how does my architecture, how do I separate this from the rest of the pack? And what is it that, what kind of value are we bringing specifically? And so I know exactly the path that you're talking about. We're starting with NSE4. So this way we have the foundational, from a technology perspective, we got the foundational firewall technical skills. So for FortiGuard, as an example, you know, if you take a look at the security and the infrastructure offerings, which are 2 and 3, which are, excuse me, 3 and 2 days respectively. And we bundle that as well too, by the way, so you could have a week's worth of training that says, I have the fundamentals, I know how to configure the a Fortinet firewall. I know exactly what it is I need to do in terms of the foundational capabilities. Now I can go into more sophisticated capabilities and more of the advanced functions as well too. And then on top of that, when you go NSE 5 and beyond, that's when you start to get even more sophisticated, and then you start to take a look at how do I build solutions around that too, which, you know, if you look at what I believe they're trying to do with their fabric, this is where this is the opportunity to be able to, one, understand how to best utilize or leverage those capabilities to their maximum effectiveness. And number two, then how do I build new capabilities on top of that?
It sounds pretty comprehensive. Is there a tier that teaches you how to set the clock on the VCR so it stops flashing 12?
Probably out there someplace.
Yeah, I'm curious if you can kind of make this a little bit more concrete, maybe for folks in the audience here. I mean, how long are these kind of courses typically? How in depth are they? What kind of prerequisites are for somebody who's hearing about all of this and realizing this might be a really smart thing for my company to do? What are they in for? What kind of investment are they making?
Well, when you talk about the investment, it's, you know, it's a week's. I mean, you start with NSE 4. It's a week. So FortiGate security is 3 days, and FortiGate infrastructure is 2 days. So FortiGate security, and this is just reiterating what I said before, but it's the first 3 days. So the investment of your time is understanding how do you leverage all the features, be it security profiles, setting up, it could be single sign-on, just as a case in point, just to understand what the capabilities are within the firewall. Then when you go into the infrastructure piece, that's 2 additional days. So if you're going for your network security expert certification, the NSE 4, and that's the one we're starting with. If you go with the security piece, which is again the foundational piece of it, and then the infrastructure piece, which is that's the more advanced capability. So that could be advanced routing, that could be redundant infrastructure, single sign-on. Once again, it's the kind of scenario where if you build on that, then you can take the progression to go from 5 and beyond. Okay, but the initial investment in terms of time, it's about a week. It is a week, I should say, you're looking at. But then there's the prep time for the exam as well too. So, I could speak from my own experience having, I've got 7 certifications myself in various technologies. So typically, this could be, it depends on the skill level of the individual. This could be a total investment if you're going to go for an NSE 4 of at least a couple of months, just to make sure that you're prepared, because then you're making your investment, you buy the exam voucher, and it's the time to take the exam. And, again, the exam it's fairly comprehensive. And by the way, I'll add that hands-on lab time is also part of these courses as well too. So it's not just understanding the concept, but I could speak for myself to understand that hands-on, how you do something, is key to really making sure you understand what the principles are and what it means in the real world itself. So labs are a part of what we offer in those 2 courses as well. When we talk about, again, the NSE 4 focus.
And these are courses and materials that you have developed yourself, developed in partnership with Fortinet?
No, Fortinet. These are developed by Fortinet, and when we go through the certification process, again, the instructor has to be certified. They need to meet certain criteria as well too. And again, this comes from, Fortinet has various authorized sources that we can obtain that material from, but that's developed directly by Fortinet. We have to adhere to their standards. And it's good that they're doing that as well too, because again, they're investing in their certification. They want it to mean something. So again, while anybody could potentially or could develop their own training, to get it directly from the source itself, that's really lending a lot of impact and credibility.
So Fortinet is obviously a really great place to start on something like this for a lot of the reasons that you outlined earlier on. But there is this enormous need for training that, you know, spans beyond the market segments that Fortinet is famous for participating in. I mean, is this part of a larger plan, strategy, initiative, exclusive networks to really offer more and more of these kinds of training resources to your partners?
Yes, they are. Absolutely. This is the beginning. But again, there is no better place to start than Fortinet itself. Again, and that's, you know, as we've talked about, that's meeting a significant need. But again, if you talk about the principles on which exclusive networks has evolved as an organization, they're definite. I will just say it's definitely in our plans to be able to continue having this evolve, to answer your question. It's only the beginning.
So this is in a way kind of taking a step back a little bit, but it gets to a topic that comes up a lot when I'm speaking with distributors, when anyone is speaking about distributors, which is just there are typically so many things that a distributor can do with their partners that people don't know about or don't take sufficient advantage of, and so on. So I mean, just for anyone out there who is offering security services to their customers or struggling with security challenges, I mean, speak maybe even just a little bit more broadly about the advantages of having a close relationship with a distributor, and maybe in particular a value-added distributor that really kind of knows cybersecurity.
Well, the direct answer on that, and you could look at any number of avenues that we could talk about, but I'll give some examples. So being able to do, and it could be something as basic as saying, we'll do implementation and staging for you, just as an example, remotely. Okay, doing the configurations in advance. Again, as a billable service, you know, again, that's adding value. But again, not all partners may necessarily have the resources or the time when running a business as well too, to be able, you know, they may not have, that could be overhead for them that they just may not be able to afford. So that's one avenue, you know, if you think about it. And then also remote configuration could be another area. And again, this is, when you think about this, it may sound very basic, but I went through an exercise as we're building out our services organization. And I came up, just for starters, I came up with, I think it was 21 or 22 different capabilities, much of which we can deliver today. I mean, some of which you could put in the category of a premium service, and some of which also it may make sense to partner up with a firm that has, you know, may have certain skill sets as well too. But the point here is, you know, that as this continues to evolve, again, you can go to a great level of sophistication. And sometimes I almost think that there are some well-kept secrets that are out there as well too. But I mean, just think about it. I mean, I've met with partners, and that, you know, a lot of what they're doing, and they want to add their own value, but they got to be able to sell, and they got to be able to work with their customers from a business perspective, just to be able to make sure that they're meeting their objectives from a business standpoint. And, you know, given the increasing demand, this is where the need, and we saw this at our partner advisory council. It was one of the, it was feedback that we got to say, look, if you could help us to scale our ability to be able to deliver, that is a huge advantage as well too. And I've heard that from other partners as well.
So Chris, I'd like to throw it over to you to kind of comment on that, because as an MSP, you are in need of services that distributors like them offer. Are they hitting all the right notes for you? Are there things that you're leveraging that you can share with your peers, or some things that you aren't leveraging that and why you're not?
Yeah, I think we've hit on a few of those items along our conversation trail here, right? Some of it is, you know, the typical irony of, do you spend money and time training your people, or do you not? And like, what if you train them and they leave? And what if you train them and they don't leave? Don't train them and they don't stay, right? All those different permutations. We lean pretty heavily on training our folks heavily and investing in them. And we find every manufacturer does it a little differently. The types of training they provide, how they pay for it, or they want us to, how much effort they want. And, you know, it's tied to partner levels. It's all the typical combination of things. I think for us, training is very important. For the different products we use, we have all of our engineers certified and trained on them, and customers come to us and rely on us because we have those certs. As I mentioned before too, we're really an advocate for our customers getting trained. Most of the time, we're finding those training programs out in the wild in other places, not necessarily through distribution. There's not always the greatest resale channel for these things. And, sometimes they're free courses, just best practice things, but other times, like VMware cert or an Amazon cert or a Microsoft certified engineer or a Cisco CCIE, they're very expensive and very long running certs that you have to invest time and money into. I think there's definitely a skills gap. And there's a ton of people trying to figure out how to get into the IT industry, and finding a way to align folks that are trying to get into the industry, whether that's directly with a corporate job, a government job, an IT partner, and the training capabilities that are out there, I think is the magic 8-ball right there.
Sure. Mark, last word.
If I could just sum things up, training is key in my mind, and again, whether or not, and it's interesting, Chris, when you talked about do individuals stay with an organization or not, we can't overlook the fact that it's just my personal philosophy. Training has got to be a part of the DNA. And even if somebody takes skills with them, you hire someone new, they know I'm going someplace where I'm going to be learning something. I'm really going to be making a difference. That's number one. And number two, given the increased demand, given some of the issues that we're talking about here as well, it's not just meeting the demand, but I mean, there's some serious impact, and risks that need to be mitigated, and sooner than later. And they're not only not going away, but they're continuing to accelerate. So whatever we may be looking at, be it ransomware, dwell time, whatever the case may be, attackers are sitting out there someplace in some way. And, this is where, again, you go back to the training, and it could be fundamental training, to your point, Chris. And there's some really good courseware that's sitting out there, on the Fortinet site, just as an example, to help teach the fundamentals. But what we're doing, and starting with NSE4, and this is going to continue to evolve, taking those technical skills to actually address those issues. Again, it's something that's going to be core to our business. And I think a huge value and definitely a need, a huge need, as demand continues to increase.
Yeah, very well said. And Chris, you're talking about, you mentioned that you want to make yourself, your business sticky for your customers, right? You also have to make your business sticky for your employees, and training is absolutely a way to do that. So if they know that they're constantly going to be learning and training and getting better, good chance to stick around a little bit longer. And if that doesn't work, you can always just glue them to their desks, and then that way they can't leave, and that'll work too. So all of those, Mark, a fascinating conversation, lots of really good stuff. If there's anyone out there listening who really is interested in the Fortinet training in particular, or other things that Exclusive Networks can offer them, where can they go? How can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
So you can go to a site that lists our training, it lists the available training. You go to training.exclusive-networks.com. That will list all the available training. And by the way, it's not just for the United States, it's worldwide as well too. So it's a great way to be able to show the depth of the knowledge and the expertise and the resources that we have. But again, that's where you go for the information. And again, we would look forward to working with anyone that, again, would like to take advantage, not only of the training that we're making available, but again, of the capabilities to help again, make it impact and add value to what our partners out there are delivering to their customers.
Awesome stuff. And we'll make sure that we put a link to that, put that link in the show notes page for episode 200. Or this is a bonus episode, so we'll put that link in the show notes for this bonus episode, so you can go and check that out as well. Go to channelpronetwork.com. If you're on YouTube, open the description area. If you're on your phone, open up the description area there. We put those links in there for you so you can find them easily. A big thanks to Mark Leff, the Director of Services Sales for North America at Exclusive Networks, for coming on and joining. And a big thanks to Exclusive Networks for sponsoring this bonus episode. So with that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Chris will be with us on the other side. We'll wrap up the show. We'll have a little bit of fun, all kinds of good stuff. You won't want to miss it. Stick around. We will be right back. And we are back with part 3 of this bonus episode of ChannelPro Weekly, sponsored by Exclusive Networks. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this bonus episode. And wow, what an interview with Mark Leff. We actually covered a lot in that interview. Rich, anything you want to highlight?
One of the many things I liked about that conversation is just that it gives you a lot of reason to think about something that is very familiar from a certain standpoint in a very different way, as a a sales opportunity or deal growing opportunity, as a retention strategy. I think there are a lot of different things like that in IT where it's maybe too much in the landscape for us to really understand all of the different ways it can be valuable. And I just liked the way that kind of emerged on the topic of training. That there are a lot of reasons why that is not just an afterthought or a consideration. It's actually a really kind of strategic thing for how you serve your customers and how you grow your business.
Very true. Very, very good highlight. Chris, anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, we were doing a lot of talking about training staff, but also reselling training, which I think is a hot topic. The thing that we've really found valuable is forcing our customers that we're selling products to also get the training and bundling it together, and that stickiness has really gone a long ways for us.
It is all about the stickiness these days, as we've learned, and that is true and very good. So awesome stuff. Big thanks to Mark Leff for coming on and talking about that. And a big thanks to Exclusive Networks for sponsoring this so we could have that conversation, because it was really fascinating. Now, in part 3, we try to do something fun. I like to, when we do these bonus episodes, I try to relate it back to what we were talking about or something with the show. So we're going to throw caution to the wind and just try something completely off the wall and see what happens. So this is either going to work or it's going to be a disaster. But either way, it's going to be entertaining. And that is all that really matters. So we were talking a lot about training. So I think, Chris, what we should do is we won't come to you to pick 5 of these, although maybe we could. We can maybe just go around and we'll pick 5 of the best training scenes in movies that we can think of. So, there's a lot of movies where, the protagonist has to train up to go do the big battle at the end or whatever, or to overcome some kind of obstacle. I can think of at least a couple off the top of my head, so maybe we won't make you come up with 5 on your own. Maybe we'll go around the room, but Chris, we'll start with you, and then that way you get to do would that be 3?
I was scribbling down some here. I got some good ones. I'm ready.
You got some good ones. All right, well, do you have 5?
Oh, I think I got 5. Yeah, I got 5.
I love it. Well, Rich, if you have any, we'll share ours too, at least a couple of them. But all right, Chris, training scene, best training scene in movie number 1. Go.
You'll have to help me remember the name of the movie, but it's a movie where Demi Moore is training to be a SEAL. Is it called SEAL? Navy SEAL? Oh, you guys can Google it.
Navy SEALs, yeah.
Yeah, the Navy SEALs. And the thing that I remember about that is that she was really training hard and overcoming obstacles, but also just the go ring the bell. If you want out, go ring the bell. Anytime, just stop and you can give up. And the thing that I remember from that movie is the grit, which is one of our core values. We have it on one of our walls over here. And I think that is a common thing with IT is, there's a lot of, you start something in IT when you're doing a migration or a project, you can't stop. It's like heart surgery. It's not like, well, I worked my 8 hours, I'm going to go home now. You have to keep going until it's done or ring the bell, which, some folks do in IT. So I was thinking about that one.
Was that, I'm trying to find the name of that movie. Was it G.I. Jane?
Yeah, maybe that's G.I. Jane. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm not seeing one that's called SEALs, but I see one on G.I. Jane. I think that's the one that you're talking about.
Yeah, G.I. Jane. Yeah, it was a long time ago. That's from the 90s, maybe.
19. Oh yeah, that was a while ago. Let's see if I can come up with a date. But yeah, good pick. I didn't think about that one, so that was a good one. All right, number 2 movie training scene number 2.
Footloose.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Okay,
right?
What's your angle on that?
Well, the whole town doesn't dance, and then you come in and you train everybody how to dance, right? And I was thinking about training, or sometimes when you go into an environment, there's a lot of naysayers and a lot of negativity. And I was thinking about, the mayor kind of saying, no, we're not going to do this. That's kind of like your decision maker in a deal. You've got a lot of influencers. Hey, if I can get all these people to affect the deal, right? So it's kind of like a strategy thing of hey, at the end, we're all going to dance across the bridge together, but you got to kind of build the sale up and then train everybody and then deploy, right? Which is a good deployment strategy there.
Oh, awesome. And hold on, red alert, puppy alert. There's a puppy nearby you. You have got to lift it up for our viewers on YouTube.
I will keep talking.
It's right behind you. Right behind you.
Oh, that's the regular sized dog.
Well, that's fine. Let's see that. Let's see that dog.
Oh, okay. Come here, Tula. Come here. Here's what. Oh, giant regular. regular sized dog.
Oh, look at that. Oh, hold on. Now I'm talking and everybody sees my face. Nobody wants to see my face.
Yeah, regular sized dog.
Adorable.
Yeah.
Aw,
The dog's sitting
so
here in
cute.
the office.
So cute.
Made a
I saw the dog sneak up behind you. I'm like, we've got to see the dog. Okay, movie training scene number 3. Go.
All right. I think man, Karate Kid's got to be in there.
Fantastic choice. A whole movie about training, in fact.
Yeah, wash on, wash off, right? That's a lot of like repeat motions, trusting the people that are training you, believing that you can do it. A lot of internal transition. Maybe I was an expert on something else and now I have to become an expert on something new. So kind of connecting the dots there.
Very cool. Movie training scene number 4.
Cool Runnings.
Oh, you have all kinds of great picks. Yes, that is a great one. That's a funny movie too, by the way.
Yeah.
So what do you want to highlight about that one?
Well, I think sometimes people think that it's not possible or that it's not the right fit or that something is so big of a mountain to climb that it's not possible. And if you really put effort into it and train repeatedly, you can compete on a world-class level once you have the experience.
Very cool. And movie number 5.
Man, this was a tough one. I would say Star Wars. Gotta go Star Wars, right? Keep the people happy. You got Jedi training in there, right? Learning to use new tools, learning to use your inherent internal skills that you already have, that you have a native ability to do, that you're already engineering inclined. You've already got the force inside of you. You just have to get a little training to get better and better at it. And the more you train, the better you get. And of course, there are lots of people training on the dark side. The hackers are coming too, right? So you've got competing sides front and back there to good versus evil.
I couldn't think of a better metaphor. And sometimes the dark side converts to the light.
Mm-hmm.
On occasion, it does happen.
All
right, Rich, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to let you pick a movie and I'll pick a movie, and then we'll wrap it up.
So this came up off the air actually, but Rocky is the ultimate training movie, right? And so much so that you think about it, that the theme song to that movie has become directly associated with training. The music that's playing when Rocky is training for his first big fight, and you see him running up the stairs in Philadelphia, etc. Like in other movies and comedies where they want to tell you that this person is training really hard for whatever, they'll play that music. Like that is the soundtrack to training, and now is the Rocky movie music. Excuse me. So that's mine.
Good one. I would have picked that one. I probably would have picked Rocky 4 though, because that is the one where he's like in the mountains and he's like using a big tree, and he's like carrying that up the mountain. And you see Ivan Drago and he's like in this like high-tech like workout kind of center, but like Rocky's like going like totally natural and carrying a tree of all things. But I will pick The Matrix because that is one. It's not only like on a kind of a fish out of water story, but it's a whole like amount of like training yourself and accepting of a whole new world. And some of the things that Neo has to go through in that movie to kind of train himself into understanding, completely re-understanding reality as he knows it, I think is pretty fascinating and a pretty cool training-esque kind of movie scene. So that was my pick. And oh my gosh, folks, if you are ever going to watch an episode of ChannelPro Weekly, this is the one to watch because Chris has just gotten the most adorable puppy. Oh, look at that. Let's see him. What's his name?
This is Bodie, and he's a mini Aussie puppy, and he's, I don't know, like 3 months old. It's one of our coworkers' dogs here that we're watching. And he is definitely very energetic, running around the office, chasing all the other dogs and learning to be a puppy.
How can you guys get any work done with all of these puppies and dogs running around the office? It's so cute. Folks, you've got to go and watch this one and see this puppy. It's adorable. Absolutely adorable. Chris, thank you so much for being on and for joining us this week for this kind of a bonus fun episode that we did, sponsored by Exclusive Networks. Big thanks to them. Chris, for those who want to learn a little bit more about you, learn more about what you do, get in touch with you, network with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, webpage is always the best place, redknightconsulting.com.
And if somebody wants to go and pet those adorable puppies, they'll have to reach out to you because I don't want to send them to your office because that you'll have like a big line out the door. Like, oh my God, I want to see the dogs. Absolutely adorable. Very cool stuff. With that, folks, big thanks to Exclusive Networks for sponsoring this kind of cool bonus episode we can throw out for you as a special treat. For those who want to subscribe to the ChannelPro Weekly podcast, we of course will be back with our regular numbered episodes as always coming up. You can find those anywhere podcasts are found. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell, hit comment, leave a comment. Comments are important, so make sure you do that. Leave a comment about how cute that puppy was, and if you don't think that puppy was cute, I want to hear your argument, so leave that in the comments as well. But I'm just gonna tell you right now, you're wrong. But I'll have that battle with you if you want. And of course, so channelpronetwork.com is the website where you want to go each and every week to get the latest news, not even a week, every day. You get the latest news, articles, white papers, resources, downloads, all kinds of stuff to help you make your business better and help you make more money. Chris, thank you for being on. Awesome stuff. Rich, anything else to add before we wrap?
I'll just echo your thank you. Always a pleasure, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Always fun, and we will be back soon. Everyone, take care. See you then.